you should be using a password manager. Always be using a password manager. Always the password manager. That's right. They're becoming trendy, and that might be a problem. Thanks for checking out this video by Switched Linux. If you like this type of content, subscribe to the channel. If you've not already done so, leave us a like and a comment down below. Today we are going to be talking about some concerning things that some people have noticed in the Bitwarden world. And we're going to talk about this in the light of password managers and maybe a little bit of what happened with VPNs, and is this the new push for something else going on? Of course, VPNs, everyone and their brother is talking about them, and I really am irritated when I see a non-tech channel trying to push, Surfshark or Nord or ExpressVPN or one of the other ones as this end-all, be-all, this is what you need to do to keep your privacy on the internet. Guys, the IP address has not been used to track you on the internet for a long time. For the average user, how the average user uses the internet, a VPN is not going to help you a whole lot. You're signed in, you're verified, you're verified with a two-factor authentication. Everyone knows exactly who you are. But what happened is everyone got onto this idea of a VPN will help you in your privacy. And so what ended up happening as a net result of that is that, well, everybody and their brother now wants to sell you a VPN in the name of privacy. And this means that there's a lot of scammers out there. There's a lot of people out there running legitimate services that are like, hey, we can make some money on this. There's a lot of buying and selling and trading of VPNs, and that might be happening to password managers. Obviously, we have some big password managers I've talked about before. Some's to definitely avoid the closed source ones for sure. You never know what's going on. LastPass, 1Password. LastPass has some nice features in it. They have a family feature that in the event of your death, you can set a family password, and in the event of your death, just like a financial account, they get the company a death certificate. They will unlock a password and you can access your entire family member's password vault. That is something more companies need to look at doing, but it's got to be super secure, like the way LastPass is doing it. So there are good things some of these proprietary groups are doing. I'm just a little bit quibbly about putting anything on the internet that has access to every one of my passwords. And that's why I don't use any of the mainstream password managers that are connected to the internet. I personally use KeePass XC, which is an entirely offline password manager. It comes with a couple of inconveniences. It's not as easy to work with on mobile. Also, if you need to update a password, you'd have to manually update that on each of your individual devices, or do something like I do with just a closed network central place where those passwords are stored, and then I can just grab it from that central place on each device. You can automate that syncing as well, but I have never actually bothered with doing any of that. All that being said, though, some people have noticed something crazy about the one major open source online password manager, and that is Bitwarden. And I saw this article on its FOSS, and I wanted to go through it because there are potentially some weird things hiding in the breeze here. And so people have noticed something going on, from major executive positions changing without any press releases to the types of works these people have done. And it starts to raise questions about, is Bitwarden about to be sold into the likes of private equity? Is that a possibility? We do not have any official announcement. I want to be very clear about that. There is no official announcement. But there's some subtle changes. There's some quiet things going on. There's some revisions on pages that, if you're very careful, you can spot them on the Internet Archive. And a lot of these things are being done without any announcements. So the first thing that happened was in February, Bitwarden's longtime CEO, Michael Crandell, steps back to an advisory role. So he's leading the whole organization. Then he decides, I'm no longer lead. I'm going to step back and simply be an advisor. Well, this means we have a CEO that spot that's vacant. Now, there was, again, no public announcement about this. It showed up apparently on his LinkedIn page, but who jumped in here? The new CEO, let's see, the old one was Michael Crandell. The new one is Michael Sullivan. Ooh, you may not, that's hard to spot. They're both Michaels. He's previously CEO of Acquia and before that Insight Software. And the challenge is that he has experience. He writes down, in fact, he has experience at all facets of mergers and acquisitions with named private equity firms, including HG, Vista Equity Partners, and TA Associates. Now, private equity is, in my opinion, one of the biggest poisons of the business world. From the University of Chicago, the law school, they did a review and talking about the dark side of private equity. Pretty much anywhere you see private equity taking over, you start to see major company abuses. Everything is maximized to maximize absolute profit, any legal means necessary, no matter who you hurt in the process, whether it's your consumers, whether it's your employees. So they actually have a backdrop here looking at this profit pressure, social harms, regulatory failures. They look at what happened in healthcare. Now, I know this because in the Pennsylvania area, UPMC is pretty much taking over multiple medical centers. They're not, I don't think they're private. Maybe they're private equity. Maybe they're just a corporate hospital, but it kind of rings through the same thing. They're coming in, they're buying up all these small hospitals throughout Pennsylvania. Invariably, every single time that happens, health quality of care drops, prices go up, good doctors leave the networks, they set up independent businesses where they can, and then eventually some of those are bought up as well. But it actually caused in their research an increase in deaths and lack of care in nursing homes and hospitals and emergency care. There's the environment issues, other industrial factors and things. But ultimately, private equity is, since it cares about absolutely nothing about making and maximizing profits within the confines of the law, the only way to battle it is regulation. You have to pass some forms of law. Now, am I saying that private equity is buying Bitwarden? Some of the writing is on the wall, but again, nothing is done with any form of announcements. The very particular background for someone stepping into the head role for a password manager company, Bitwarden's CFO also changed. Stephen Morrison left in April, and Michael Shankman, all these Michaels, who previously ran Envision, came in as a replacement, and none of these were officially announced. Also, they made some changes. The term always free end up missing after a while, but then I guess that was too obvious and they put it back. So goes onto the Wayback Machine and finds the term always free had been on Bitwarden's personal products page for a long time, sitting inside the plan comparison table. It disappeared sometime in mid-April and was only restored after May 14th. So they actually have archives of all of these things here as well. So having a look at down here, looking at the various things here. Let's see if we can find where that spot was at. I think it was down here. I'm going to look for always free. There's always free down here is what they're referencing. And over here on the Internet Archive, woo, look at that. It has disappeared. So good work on spotting that. A company employee on our Bitwarden said it was supposedly due to an oversight by the Bitwarden marketing team. Yeah, because when you're in a marketing team, you always tend to delete things that people like to see. Of course, you might be doing on A/B testing to see what the reaction is. Maybe they don't have enough people looking at their site to spot it that it took going back. But also they had this issue. The value is quietly changing. Bitwarden has used GRIT acronym for a long time. Gratitude, responsibility, inclusion, and transparency. That transparency is really nice in FOSS software. Again, they checked the Wayback Machine. At some point, they were quietly changed. GRIT now stands for gratitude, responsibility, but then they changed the last ones to innovation and trust. Two things you find thrown around in the private equity world a whole lot, by the way. Also, they changed the original blog post for when GRIT was laid out. And they said here it was edited to reflect the new ones. The editing stopped halfway down. The explanatory paragraph further down still describes inclusion and transparency as the values. They didn't go far enough. So Sullivan published a blog recently laying out his first 100 days at Bitwarden, also hashing some things. The free tier is not going anywhere. He ruled out a trial model or a bait and switch and said that the open source foundation and the ability to audit the code, self-host, and verify are what make Bitwarden different. Now, to be clear, the reason I've never done a video here about self-hosting a Bitwarden instance is because, like Plex, you have to give them information about you in order to even run your own self-hosted instance. And if you'll remember, Plex, all that data from Plex that they collect to require you, to use your own server that you're paying for on your own media that you bought to watch it and access it yourself, all that information they required you to give them leaked, if you don't remember that. And I'm worried that Bitwarden, if they have a security lapse and they're registering and logging all of these addresses, this is a major deal if that were to leak. Now, that has not happened, but I'm saying that it is a possibility. It is something that could happen if they're collecting such data, and they have been. So while you can audit the code, and many people have, some people have modified it and forked the code for sure, it's not one I would personally run and feel confident with having out there because of the fact that they collect information. He also acknowledged that changes are coming, but they wouldn't tell you what those changes are. Woo! Changes are coming. We're being bought up by private. It'll be a great deal because we'll have all this capital investment. But in reality, according to what Harvard said here, effectively this harms employees, it harms the customers, it harms about everything. And I can speak from this from the web design world. In web hosting, there was a company, I think they may have changed their name, but at least a few years back, they were called the Endurance International Group. This is a private equity firm that goes behind the scenes. They don't make press releases. They don't do a lot of things, but they look for which hosting companies are growing and they buy them up so that they can maximize profits. So years and years ago, my first websites were hosted on Bluehost because a friend of mine that I was working with, he said, oh man, Bluehost is awesome. So I looked down and said, oh yeah, Bluehost looks pretty good. I held a Bluehost for a long time. And I just noticed, no major announcements, no email notification of an ownership change, but I just noticed the service got crap. So I start hunting around and I jump over to HostGator. Service was great on HostGator. I had no problems. And then a few years later, HostGator started to be crap. I started looking into this and I find Endurance International Group, a private equity firm that specializes in buying up hosting companies, but they keep all the branding the same. They keep everything behind the scenes. But what they do is they lay off the security team. They lay off the support team. They outsource all that crap to some third world country somewhere. You have excessively long lines on customer service. Servers that get overcrowded. They become malicious and full of bugs, yet nobody's there to deal with them. And the entire product goes to crap, but they don't care because they're just collecting cha-ching, cha-ching, cha-ching. And they keep on making it on the past good reviews that has a long historical history. This company comes up and absolutely decimates everything they touch. So every time I look for hosting companies, I always call them up and say, hey, who is your main owner, or what information can you tell me? And some of them are aware of who Endurance International Group is and are saying, no, we are actively avoiding any working with them at all. And the thing is that as these companies come in, they decimate the employees, they decimate the customers, they decimate the products so they can extract the maximum profits with the minimal effort while complying with the minimum degree of the law. That could be what's happening. Again, all of the writing seems to be on the wall. We just don't know what it is. We need a prophet like Daniel to come in and explain it to us. And it might very well say when he comes in, your days are numbered. Okay, so should you be worried? We don't know yet. I'm not telling you to abandon Bitwarden because it is, if you're going to be using an internet connected service, it is going to be among the best. Now, there is actually a fork called Bitwarden, and it's actively updated. You'll see the latest update was 3 weeks ago. They have 82 releases. You can audit all the code, and it's basically based on the Bitwarden servers based on Rust. So if you don't like Rust, unfortunately, well, here it is. But this is an open source alternative. As I said, I prefer KeePass XC. It is offline rather than online, but I deal with the the challenges that you might get with an offline system. I prefer to deal with that because, frankly, I just don't want to be dealing with the headache of having the potential of my passwords leaking all over the place. But the challenge we have here is that it does appear something is changing. They're doing a lot of things behind the scenes. They're not really talking about it, explaining what they're doing. And this usually is the type of stuff you see before some big private equity firm comes in and grabs it up. So if you are using Bitwarden, do not jump right away. It is still one of the best options, but start looking at how you can make a change. KeePassXC, by the way, allows you to export your Bitwarden database into their system. Just be aware that is an option in the event things go crazy. If you're considering Bitwarden, consider the fact that there are some weird things going on. They remove the word transparency from their main values, and they're not particularly being transparent about what's going on. That should be a red flag for you. If you're looking for something and you can host it yourself, consider Vaultwarden, or just be aware that it could be something that could cause a challenge for you later on down the road. So just be aware of that. But for me, what I'm starting to see is everybody's talking about password managers. I think we're going to start to see the same shift in this as we saw in the VPN world, where everybody and their brother starts creating new ones, buying, selling, and trading, and pushing these things. And sometimes you have dubious products, sometimes you have good ones, and it's up to you to do the fairest amount of research to figure out which are the best options you have. I would always stay with open source over a proprietary, but I have serious qualms working with anybody that is dealing in private equity. Let me know your thoughts about all that in the comments down below. Are you using Bitwarden? Let us know that as well. Does this concern you? Let me know that also. Thanks for watching, and I hope that you enjoy switching to Linux.